The comments heard on The View From A Pew are those of Mac McKoy and are not necessarily the opinions of his guests, his producer Garth, any one particular denomination or religion, the church lady, Mr. Lemke, Pastor Craig, or anyone else of sound mind and body. Now here is today's The View From A Pew, heard all around the world on YouTube. Just search for The View From A Pew.
It's about that time of day, 4 o'clock on your radio, and on podcast and video, you're getting this when you want to get it. And we thank you for going to our podcast sites or to our webcast sites. That's a new phrase in our industry. For years and years, podcast was the term for a delivery of a product other than the means of radio or something like that. So webcast means we have audio and video. So, that's what you wanted to know today. I'll also tell you Jesus loves you. So that's
Amen.
The most important thing. All right. Well, my guest host is back after rampaging across the country. Where'd you go? Just Colorado?
All the way out to British Columbia. I left the country even.
Did you have to have a passport?
I did. I took my passport with me.
If I would have known that, I would have called the officials. I would have called the Mounties and told the Canadian Mounties and said, you can't let this guy back in.
I did get stopped, so I kind of question what you did there now.
Really? Did you
Yeah,
really?
we were trying to bring eggs across the border, and that's a no-no because there is some kind of disease that's being passed among birds. Some kind of bird flu thing, and so we were trying to take 3 eggs across the border, and we got stopped for that.
What? 3 eggs?
3 eggs.
So you had to give them the eggs back.
We did.
Were they hard boiled?
Well, no, they were still in our ice chest, and so they were fine. But that's okay.
Yeah, I know.
We didn't mind that.
I know how that goes. All right, so you're back from a vacation. You're here back for a couple weeks.
Yes.
And this week we're going to be talking about our first job, and you entitled that Garden Keepers.
Do you remember when you were young? Do you remember what your first job was, Mac?
Running away from the grandmother I didn't like when she had her yardstick.
I don't think you got paid for that, probably, though.
Paid?
Yeah.
My mother giving me money and saying, don't come home till dark. No, I really don't. I mean, I think I got an allowance, but I was a paper boy.
Oh, that's your job.
Probably by the 5th grade or so in my neighborhood. So that would have been my first job. And then I also got to work at a couple restaurants in Beatrice when I was younger.
Well, you were ahead of me. I didn't start officially working till the 7th grade, and there was a student janitor position available for me. So my dad thought that I needed to start earning some income, so I started as a janitor. But if you look at a biblical sense, what is the Bible trying to tell us? It says our first job as human beings is to take care of planet Earth.
Yeah.
Garden keepers.
So when you talk about garden keepers, you're not really talking about the garden. You're talking about the earth.
Well, Adam and Eve were in a garden.
Right.
Remember in Genesis 1 and 2?
I remember the story.
Yeah, they were in a garden, and God said, this is your job. He gave them dominion. You're
over
in charge.
Everything.
Over everything. That's right.
Except that one darn tree.
That's right.
And
Just
the devil came down and said, "Oh, you can go ahead and eat off that tree. You'll be all right."
God said just leave it alone, but they couldn't do that. Now, I want you to think about how this develops. In Genesis 1 and 2, God creates, if you go literally according to the days of creation, God creates light. He next, on the second day, creates the firmament, that's the atmosphere, that band of oxygen that's around this earth that we can breathe and things can grow. On the third day, divides the waters and the land, and the vegetation grows, right?
Yeah.
Vegetation grows, trees, flowers, bushes, everything. Fourth day, sun, moon, and stars, everything out there above this earth. Then on the sixth day, everything that lives in the water and lives in the sky is what God creates. All the fish of the sea, all the birds of the air are created. Sixth day, he creates all the land animals. And then towards the end of the sixth day somewhere, he creates man.
We're kind of an extra throw in.
Yeah.
I've got a little time left. What should I do? I'll invent somebody who can mouth off to me and sin.
Yeah. But God did make man the crowning act of creation. There's no question. But at the same time, look at all the creation that God did ahead of time. He created all these things, all these living creatures particularly, and he puts us all together on this planet. And then he says to man and woman, he says, you have dominion. You not only are in charge, you have responsibility. That's a big word. You have responsibility to take care of all this.
Right.
So that's what we're talking about. We're going to be talking about this week, our responsibility to the things that God created.
When did God tell Adam to name all the animals? Was that must have been the sixth day?
It had to be the sixth day after God created Adam, after he formed him from the dust of the earth.
Because, when I get to heaven, I'm going to talk to Adam. I want to know where he got the term porcupine. What is that? It's not a pig, porca, pine.
Of course, that's an English word. So we don't know what language he originally had, and it may have had a whole different sound to it, but that's what we Englishmen say.
I say prickly little critter.
Yeah, prickly little critter.
All right, go ahead.
Hey, 2 big movies this summer came out, blockbuster movies. Do you know what they are?
I think there were 3 blockbuster movies.
Well, there may have been, but there were 2 that led the way.
Okay, well, you've got the Christian one about the trafficking of young people in America and across the world.
Yes.
You've got Barbie, who I have not seen.
Okay, Barbie's big.
Barbie's big?
Right. The Barbie movie has got all the Barbie lovers really gung-ho again.
Well, and it's also a very woke movie.
Well, I don't know. I haven't seen it, but I'll take your word on it.
And then the other one is Oppenheimer.
Yes.
Which is the story about the creation of the atom bomb.
Yes. Okay, so one movie is about America's favorite doll, right? Barbie. Everybody loves Barbie, right? Even my daughter had a Barbie when she was growing up, okay? All little girls want to be sure and have a Barbie doll somewhere through life, right?
Okay,
this is what this big blockbuster movie is about. This is a movie that led the way. It was more than Oppenheimer. It was more than any other movie this summer. It is getting huge amounts of money from people that are going to the theaters watching it now, okay?
Okay.
Oppenheimer is about the invention of the atom bomb, right? Okay.
Yes.
Concern in this movie is human beings are reaching the point where they could what?
Destroy the planet.
Destroy the planet, that's right.
Well, and I don't know if they could destroy the planet.
I don't know if they could either.
They could destroy all of the living things on the planet.
Yeah, that's right. Now, which issue do you think should be number one, should be most important? Concern about destroying the planet or America's favorite doll? Well, most people are concerned about Barbie, the favorite doll.
Yeah,
now,
the big seller.
reason I'm pointing that out is because the other issue about creation care, about taking care of the earth, that's not as big a popular item as other things. But we're going to talk about it because it is a biblical point.
I don't know if you and I have ever talked about this, but do you believe in climate change?
I believe that the climate is changing. I don't know all the science behind it. And
Well, do you think we're changing it, or it's the cycle of God putting it in action?
well, I think it's possible that we're having some effect upon nature. Human beings have done a lot in this world, and human beings have done things that are not good for the health of this world. I'm not going to deny that. There's a lot of things we've clearly discovered that haven't been good. I'm not going to try to be an authority on climate change, but I do think that we could do things better than what we're doing now.
Okay, well, you're wrong, but that's all right.
Okay.
I
You're
just
welcome.
think God's in charge, and that's the end of it. And if God does not want this atmosphere or the temperatures to change or whatever, it's not going to. So if he's allowing us to change that, then that's his will.
But God is allowing sin to have its effect in this world too. And if we sin, we can also sin against the created things that God made for us.
Okay. I'm going to take a no on that one.
Okay, you're welcome too.
All right, so when we come back tomorrow, same bat station, same bat time, 4
Okay.
o'clock on your local radio station. And if you're listening on podcast or watching on webcast, then it's whenever you want it. But we're going to start talking about your summer vacation. Seriously?
Yes, I got to tell you where I went. This is like first grade.
Oh, my God.
You know, what'd you do during your summer vacation?
I haven't had one yet because you keep taking them. Somebody's got to be here.
Okay,
Did you ever think about that?
well, you ought to find out what I'm doing then.
Oh, good. So I can live vicariously
That's
through
true.
you and your wife. All
That's
right.
true.
All right, so we will be back tomorrow. We sure appreciate you taking the time to listen. If you haven't before, my name is Mac, and that's Pastor Delmar Austin. And the radio program is called The View From A Pew. And it's brought to you by the good folks, the very good folks at DivineTruthChristianStore.com. Anything, anytime you can order it from Divine Truth Christian Store. And thanks for listening.
Divine Truth Christian Store, where you'll find more.
The comments heard on The View From A Pew are those of Mac McKoy and are not necessarily the opinions of his guests, his producer Garth, any one particular denomination or religion, the church lady, Mr. Lemke, Pastor Craig, or anyone else of sound mind and body. Now, here is today's The View From A Pew, heard all around the world on YouTube. Just search for The View From A Pew. The comments heard on The View From A Pew are those of Mac McKoy and are not necessarily the opinions of his guests, his producer Garth, any one particular denomination or religion, the church lady, Mr. Lemke, Pastor Craig, or anyone else of sound mind and body. Now, here is today's The View From A Pew, heard all around the world on YouTube. Just search for The View From A Pew.
And thank you, Emily, our lovely voice, who does our disclaimer at the beginning of each radio program. And sometimes when you're watching this on a webcast, all you have to do is go to youtube.com and then search for The View From A Pew. You'll see and recognize the mistakes we make because I believe in transparency, and so we don't go back and through and edit. And there was one there just a minute ago. Folks on the radio, you didn't know it, but folks online just heard us do that twice. But, you know, this is the way it really is in the world. We get do-overs. We get mulligans, and you can't erase it. Unlike a lot of people in this world and in this country think you can erase history. By taking down the statue, well, that didn't happen. By taking them off the air, well, that didn't happen. We'll change the narrative and say this is what happened, not what they told you before. And that is a characteristic of sin. And I refuse. The only thing I have in my life that I'm in control of is me and my dogs would argue with that. So anyway, so sometimes you'll hear a mistake. It's because we love you. We're just shooting you straight. You can email me anytime at M-A-C like macaroni, at theviewfromapew.com. Mac at theviewfromapew.com. Would love to have your feedback. All right, it's day 2 of our first job as garden keepers, and my co-host, Pastor Delmar Austin, in the studio, and we're going to hear about your summer vacation.
That's right. We are talking about creation care.
If you hear me snoring, just ignore.
Oh, come on. I didn't bring my slides along.
Oh, that's true.
That's true. So I'm just going to tell you, and I'm going to tell you fairly briefly about where we went. We went to British Columbia. That's on the western side of Canada. We went over, we stayed mainly in Vancouver, but we also went over to Vancouver Island, which is right next to that. And we also stopped at Yellowstone Park on the way back.
Okay, so that's in the one in Colorado.
Yeah, well, no.
Wyoming?
It's in Wyoming.
Okay.
But we drove all the way out and drove back. It was about 4,600 miles altogether, yeah.
But there is no, I know this is probably an ignorant question, but I'm just asking. There is no Yellowstone Park in British Columbia.
No, Yellowstone is in Wyoming.
Okay.
But it was right close to Interstate 90, and so it was really easy to drop down from there.
I should know that because I'm watching the show on TV, but I understand now.
The reason I'm telling you about my summer vacation is because it was spectacular. We saw some of the most beautiful stuff that's part of North America, in my opinion. The beautiful Douglas firs that grow in the Cascade Mountains are just amazing. They're not as big as the redwoods, of course, but they're big.
Yeah.
And they are beautiful trees. And we saw gobs of canyons and waterfalls and ocean bays and islands. And I mean, we saw such a amazing selection of things that are part of the natural world. We went over to Vancouver Island, and we went there particularly to go to a place called Bouchard Gardens. Bouchard Gardens is about 13 acres of botanical garden that is just in this one location together, and it is spectacular. It is the greatest gardens I've ever seen. There's about 1 million visitors that come there every year.
Wow.
And it was during summertime, during July, it was at the peak. I mean, some of the best colors, some of the best beds that were just overflowing with flowers and colors.
Yeah.
It was a beautiful sight.
And those that don't know it, Delmar and his wife are very good gardeners. And so this is really kind of up your alley when you go to do this.
We love to go see gardens.
Yeah.
And so we enjoyed it very much. We also enjoy all sorts of living creatures. And at Yellowstone, we were able to see buffalo, elk. We were able to see bald eagles. We did not see this time, because we've been in their past, we did not see moose, bear, and wolves, although they're fairly common in Yellowstone too, and you should be able to see them. And for us, one of our biggest discoveries, and this was back in BC, was pileated woodpeckers. We got to see pileated woodpeckers. Now you can see them here actually in Omaha, but they're pretty rare.
What is a pileated? How is a pileated woodpecker different than like Woody the woodpecker?
You remember Woody the woodpecker?
Yeah.
Okay, his body with the crest on top.
Yeah.
That's a pileated woodpecker.
So Woody was a pileated.
Most of the woodpeckers that we see around here are smaller birds.
Okay.
Pileated woodpecker is a bigger bird, and it has this big crest on the back, and you can hear them from almost miles away. I mean, when they start pecking on a tree, they got this big bill, and they're knocking away on it. But we saw 2 pairs of pileated woodpeckers, and we thought, my wife is a real bird person. She
Yeah.
loves seeing birds,
Yes, she is.
and the fact that we caught those there was
Caught 'em?
well, we
Did you
caught
catch
it.
them and eat them?
We caught a sight of them.
Oh.
Because it's so hard to see them sometimes because they're pretty rare birds, and they usually stay in the backwoods of the forest.
Well,
someplace.
see, I get excited with seals and orcas and whales, and you're all hyped up about Woody the woodpecker.
Well, we could have gone out and seen those too. We chose not to. There are boat rides that you can take that go out into the bay and into the ocean, and you can see those kind of animals. But we didn't do that this time. We've done that in the past. But we really enjoyed this trip. This trip was beautiful. And it reminded us, Mac, of the responsibility, the biblical responsibility that humanity has to this earth, taking care of this earth. Now, let me give you an illustration because I know you're a little bit of a doubter. We took a little boat trip, though, out into the harbor. It was kind of a taxi ride. We went from one place to another.
Were you oaring?
Oh,
Were
no,
you
no,
rowing?
no. It was.
You made your wife row?
No. It had a motor on it, and
Oh.
they ferried us from one side
Oh,
to
so
the
you
other.
weren't running the boat.
It's called a water taxi, okay?
All right.
And we were on, and the guy running the boat was telling us all about it. He was telling us about the harbor, it was the Victoria Harbor. Victoria is on Vancouver Island, but he was telling us how this harbor used to be such a beautiful place and how you would see seals and orcas and even other whales that would come up into the area. As Victoria grew, there were all sorts of things that began to leak down into the harbor. There was even some open sewage sometimes that got in. There was petroleum and petroleum products and, and trash. And the harbor got trashed out by humans. Okay? Well, all these animals, they didn't want to stay there, so you wouldn't see them anymore in the harbor. But now, for a period of years, they have had a process going of cleaning up the harbor.
Yep.
And they say now the water is very clear. It is the way that it looked originally. And now these animals are beginning to come back. Now, we didn't see them on our ride, but they said it's not uncommon for us to see seals out in the harbor again. And now and then we'll see an orca or a killer whale that comes up. And so it looks like things are changing again. Why? Because mankind is taking seriously the responsibility that we have to not trash out this earth, to take care of this earth. We as human beings at times have done that. We have been bad garden keepers. We have not taken care of things the way we should. And therefore, we ought to make an effort. If we really believe that God is the God of creation, God created everything that all the forms of life on this planet, then we ought to do what we can to take care of those things, and then we can enjoy the wonders that God created for us more. That makes sense?
It makes perfect sense.
Well, that's just
I don't seem too excited, do I?
You don't seem real excited about it, but you know, Mac.
Oh, but I am. I'm so happy for you.
You need to get out more, too.
Yeah, I do.
You need to get out and see some of the wonders that God has made because, that's the greatest part about our vacations is we get out there to see Yellowstone Falls. I mean, that's an amazing falls.
Yeah.
It's a landmark in the United States. To go there and to see those tons of water that are crashing over that falls every second, every day, it's really amazing to see.
Have you ever seen Niagara Falls?
Yes.
Is it similar?
Well, Niagara Falls is bigger. The falls area is bigger, and it's very impressive. And yes, there's a lot of water. Yellowstone Falls is right in the middle of a canyon, and it's just very picturesque. and I had to work really hard to get down there because there were cloudy days, and to get a good picture, you have to get a picture when the sun is shining right on it. So I got down there to a perfect spot on one of these days when the sun came out, and I got a really great picture of Yellowstone Falls.
Well, I'm glad you had a good time. I genuinely am. Is there anything else you want to talk about, and then we can get back to the Bible study?
Well, the Bible study is about this. The Bible study is about...
so you're turning your vacation into the Bible study.
Well, I'm just saying that we were able to enjoy... Mac, there is a big gate at the north entrance of Yellowstone Park, and the big gate says, "For the pleasure of the people," because the government at one time set up Yellowstone Park, the first national park in our country, set it up so that we could go and see the wonders that God's created.
Yeah. And I'm glad they did that. Joe Biden just opened up another one. I think he called it the ninth wonder of the world. Aren't there 7 wonders of the world?
7 ancient wonders of the world, yes.
Oh, okay. All right, we're going to take a break, and when we come back, it'll be Wednesday. And no, it'll be Thursday, and we sure appreciate you taking the time to be with us on this tour of Garden Keepers, our first job. I'm Mac McKoy for Pastor Delmar Austin, and we thank you for listening today. We appreciate your time. If you ever have any comments, you can let us know. Email us at M-A-C like macaroni, at theviewfromapew.com. And thanks to the kids out of DivineTruthChristianStore.com for being the sponsor of this worldwide ministry.
Divine Truth Christian Store, where you'll find more.
The comments heard on The View From A Pew are those of Mac McKoy and are not necessarily the opinions of his guests, his producer Garth, any one particular denomination or religion, the church lady, Mr. Lemke, Pastor Craig, or anyone else of sound mind and body. Now, here is today's The View From A Pew, heard all around the world on YouTube. Just search for The View From A Pew.
Thank you, Emily. It is a Thursday morning, actually Thursday afternoon, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, on your local radio station, and thank you for tuning in to The View From A Pew. It's also at YouTube, at youtube.com. Search for The View From A Pew, and we thank you for listening. You know, for several years now, our theme song has been from The Chosen.
Yes.
And I am so happy to announce, and everybody probably knows this, but it's now on the CW. So you can watch it now on regular, not paid TV. Good. And I don't think it's every night, but I think it's at least once a week. And it's nice that people can watch, you know, that program without having to spend extra money on it. So, and that's our theme, of course. All right, Garden Keepers is the conversation we're having. And what does the Bible say about garden keepers, about the creation that God created for us to enjoy and to take care of? And yes, I know we screwed it up, but that wasn't God's fault.
No, the Bible is very clear about the importance of creation. So we're going to look at the Bible texts that deal with having dominion over what God created and being responsible for it too. So we start in Genesis chapter 1, and this is what God says when he creates man, but he's looking back now at everything that he's created. Genesis 1:26, and God said, "Let us make man in our image, according to our likeness. Let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, over the cattle, over all the earth, over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. We tend to get focused on what God did when he created us, which is great. We are the crowning act of creation. However, God gave us a responsibility when he first created us. Then God blessed them and said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and subdue it, have dominion," there's the word, "over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, and over every living thing that moves on the earth." We have special responsibility towards those things. The Bible is very clear. So what we said in the first 2 days, about creation care, about taking care and having responsibility, this is a biblical point that's very clear from the very beginning. God did not just create us and say, go crazy, do anything you want. He said, you have a job here. You have a responsibility, and your first job is to take care of this created work that I have made. And that includes living things. It includes the earth itself. So, the Bible's very, very clear about that. The Bible also talks a lot about the wonders of creation. If you go to the book of Psalms, and you read through some of the Psalms, you find out that David waxes very poetic when he starts talking about the created things that God made. He talks about the beauty of all the things around him. Now remember David the shepherd boy.
Yeah.
He's outdoors. He's an outdoorsman. He's out there as a young man. He's watching the sheep. And what does he think about? He thinks about all the beautiful things that he sees as he's herding those sheep. And so he talks about the wonders of these things. Now that's inspired writing. God is putting it within his heart to recognize the beauty of the things that God has made. Why is it that we take care of creation? Because God has created a perfect thing. And even after the time of the flood, which I believe is an actual event that the Bible refers to, even after the time of the flood, the earth is still beautiful. There are some amazing things in this world, and God says that we ought to take care of those things. Now, in the book of Job and his three friends are disputing things, and they're talking with each other over some of the troubles that Job is facing. It's interesting, in one of the arguments that Job is having with his friends, that it is mentioned in here about animal life and about what plans that God has. Notice in chapter 12 of Job, "But now ask the beasts, and they will teach you, and the birds of the air, and they will tell you, or speak to the earth, and it will teach you, and the fish of the sea will explain to you. Who among all these does not know that the hand of the Lord has done this?" If you as human beings are too dense to figure this out, go ask the birds of the air. Go ask the beasts of the field. They know that this is from the hand of God, that this is special from God. Even Job reaffirms this point, that mankind's reaction to this should be recognizing that what God has made is beautiful, and it is something that can be a real blessing in our lives.
Pastor Delmar Austin is my co-host today. As always, I'm Mac McKoy. And if you want to get a hold of us, it's easy. Just email us, Mac, M-A-C, like macaroni, at theviewfromapew.com. Today is a Thursday, and we're talking about garden keepers, which was our first job, and actually is still our first job, to take care of the earth around us.
And God has told us He has made an amazing world for us. And that doesn't take a lot of intelligence to figure out. We can see the beauty around us, and we can see the beautiful things. But God is trying to tell us about the significance of all this, and therefore we should take it seriously to be good garden keepers. And notice what he says in Revelation chapter 11, verse 18, as he's talking about sort of last day scenario. He's talking about how it's all coming to an end. He says, the nations were angry and your wrath is come, and the time of the dead that they should be judged, that you should reward your servants, the prophets and the saints. He's talking about the end of time here, right?
Yeah.
About the second coming of Jesus. And those who fear your name, small and great, and should destroy those who do what? They destroy the earth.
Yeah.
God says he's going to come again. He's going to hand his reward to the saints, and he's going to destroy those who do what? Destroy the earth. So we do have a responsibility. And those that do not value the salvation that he gives also do not value the gifts that he gave, which includes the beautiful world that he has created for us. And you can see this as you look into the Bible and you see places where God has indicated that, we need a little bit of encouragement to start doing these things. If you look back into the Old Testament, you see laws that God wrote in there in regards to animals and vegetation and how to take care of those things. You remember the Sabbath commandment. It comes out of Exodus chapter 20.
Yeah, thou shalt keep the Sabbath holy.
And you shall not do any work, right?
Right.
And it's not just you. It includes even the people within your gates, right? But it even includes the ox and the donkey. They're listed too, right? Don't put them to work on the Sabbath day. Why? Because the Sabbath day is a day of rest. Do they have some rights on the Sabbath day too? Yes, is what God is saying. There even are rules in regards to the vegetation that grows. There are rules regarding letting a field lie fallow every 7th year. Do farmers do that today? Not many of them. They keep the crops growing year after year after year. God says, allow the fields to lie fallow. It actually helps the soil. The soil can recover better and do a better job after it's allowed to rest. But not only that, it is for the animals too. The animals that can have a place to come and eat. And you don't have to worry that they're eating your wheat crop or eating your corn crop or whatever. You can allow the animals, in fact, you're supposed to allow them to come and eat on that 7th year when the field is resting. So, God writes into it, into his rules for Israel. He writes in rules about taking care of land, taking care of vegetation, taking care of animals. In fact, in his picture of the last days, there's just a short little picture in the book of Hosea that I think is pretty cute and almost kind of funny. Hosea chapter 2 and verse 18. He says in that day, and he's talking about the day of the Lord, he's talking about the end of time, in that day I will make a covenant for them with the beasts of the field, the birds of the air, and with creeping things on the ground. Bow and sword of battle I will shatter from the earth to make them lie down safely. He's going to get rid of everything that is used even against the animals, so that they can lie safely on this earth, so that they can have peace and rest. God's picture of the way that he created things, the way he's going to restore things, is that animals are not going to be hunted. Animals are not going to be in fear of their lives, because God's going to do away with those things.
But he didn't do that good a job, because we have continued to kill animals and not take care of our planet the way a lot of people think we should.
And that's because of a sinful world. It's those consequences of a sinful world. And we ought to acknowledge that. We don't need to grovel in that, but we need to acknowledge the fact that there have been some things that we've done that we shouldn't do again, that we've maybe poisoned the earth in some ways. We need to quit using those kind of poisons. We need to try to take care of the earth and realize the effects that we're having.
I'm Mac McKoy, and my co-host, of course, is Pastor Delmar Austin, and we are here to thank you for listening, either on podcast or on webcast or live on the radio every afternoon on your local radio station at 4 o'clock Central Time. When we come back, we're going to take care of the last day, and that's man's care of being a garden keeper. And thanks to the folks at Divine Truth Christian Store for being our sponsors. And we'll see you in about 23 hours. And oh, by the way, if we're not here, find Jesus, because that's where you'll find us. Amen.
The comments heard on The View From A Pew are those of Mac McKoy and are not necessarily the opinions of his guests, his producer Garth, any one particular denomination or religion, the church lady, Mr. Lemke, Pastor Craig, or anyone else of sound mind and body. Now here is today's The View From A Pew, heard all around the world on YouTube. Just search for The View From A Pew.
Thank you, Emily, for opening up our program every day. We sure appreciate that. I'm Mac McKoy, and this is The View From A Pew. And you can reach us at Mac, M-A-C like macaroni, at theviewfromapew.com. Always enjoy your input as to what you'd like to hear on this program and what maybe you didn't want to hear on this program when we talked about it. I'm a big boy. I got a pretty thick skull, and I'm always willing to listen to things that you think we can do better. After all, how do we improve if we can't do that? My guest co-host today is, of course, Pastor Delmar Austin. All week long, we've been talking about our first job, the garden keepers. The keepers of the earth. And it is interesting to hear someone of faith talk about how we should be taking care of our planet when it is usually the unfaithful or those other people who are so worried about our planet. And that's kind of where I get my comment that I made at the beginning of the show on Monday is God's in charge of this planet. He's not going to let us destroy it unless that's what God's will is.
Well, I'm not sure how the conversation changed. I think people of faith ought to recognize more than anybody else the importance of taking care of the earth that God gave us. Not only is it a responsibility, and I focused on that from the very first.
Yeah.
But it is about our relationship with God. How does creation care? How does this have to do with Jesus? We love Jesus because of the salvation that he provided for us, right?
Yeah.
Then shouldn't the things that are important to Jesus be important to us?
Well, we talk about our bodies being the temple of the Lord.
Yes.
But in many ways, so is the earth.
That's
the
true.
Temple of the Lord, because that's where all the other animals and all the birds and the bees and the sycamore trees, that's where they all live, and we need to be able to take care of them too. And just a point, put the politics aside. Figure out what's best for the earth, and let's do that.
You know what? God gave us this strong, healthy body. At least most of us were born that way. We can decide what we want to do with it. We can trash out our body if we want to.
Yeah.
We can eat and drink and do the wrong kind of activities that will cause us a short lifespan if we choose to do that, or we can do the right kind of things. That's what biblical healthful living is about. But it has the same kind of application when you think in terms of the earth. We can either trash out the earth or we can take care of it. In fact, we can even try to make it a more beautiful place to live. And when you go to some of the places like I did, and you go to some of these parks and how man has worked to create this amazing display of natural things, like flowers everywhere. It's inspiring. It's awe-inspiring to see.
Yeah, it is. It is one of the comments that I will use back when I'm having a nice, friendly conversation with someone who doesn't agree that there is a God and that there is no reason for faith or belief in Jesus. And he'll say, well, give me proof of God. Just look around. And then most of the time atheists are pretty smart. Then look into what you've learned about how all of this fits together like a Rubik's Cube. And I don't remember what it was, but if we were 1 mile closer to the sun, it would destroy our planet.
That's right.
1 mile.
We'd be too hot.
We'd be too hot.
And if we were 1 mile too far away, it'd be too cold
to
live.
And everything that just works within what we call Mother Nature. And we've got to do a better job of doing that and not getting confused with all the politics of it.
Let me tell you a couple stories. There was a couple, John and Molly Chester, who lived in the city, lived in the LA area, went to their jobs every day, fought traffic, sat in an office all day, and they said, you know what? This is not the way that we want to live. We don't want to live the rest of our lives this way. What we want to do is we want to go out and live on a farm and farm the land and see if we can do this. And so they go out and they find a piece of land north of LA. It's about 200 acres, and it is wasted land. It had been a horse ranch at one time.
Oh, okay.
And it had been years since the land had been used, but it was trashed out with buildings that were collapsed. There were weeds growing everywhere. It was an ugly piece of land. Well, they bought it for a good price, and then they were able to start restoring it. And they did this amazing job of creating a sustainable farm in this location. They call it Apricot Lane Farms now. And they did an actual movie about it called The Biggest Little Farm. If you haven't ever seen that movie, it's worth your time to watch.
The biggest
little farm. Yeah.
Okay.
They have on that farm today, which is a very active farm, they produce 200 variety of fruit and vegetables. They raise sheep, cows, pigs, chickens, and ducks. Uh-huh. They don't use any hormones, no pesticides, no fertilizers, no GMOs, and they are just doing great. They have everything they do is in a very natural way, and the farm itself, the land itself, it has become very fertile. Out of this wasted land that nobody was doing anything with, now through the processes that they are using, this place has become an amazing place, and it's producing all this kind of stuff.
And where is this at again? Apricot Lane?
This is north of the LA area. You can go on tours today and actually see what they're doing. And it is so popular. Everybody knows what they're doing. They sell a dozen eggs for $15, and they never have enough.
Wow.
because people want good eggs that are raised under natural conditions. And that's what they're doing.
Yeah, you see that in the grocery store all the time, range-free.
Yeah.
And no pesticides, no things like that.
That's right. Because they want people to be healthy when they're consuming products that come off of a place where the chickens are.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But did you know that here in Nebraska that we have another similar kind of story? If you've ever heard of the author Marie Sandos,
No.
she wrote a bunch of books about what it was like when her father first came and pioneered in western Nebraska. Old Jules is one of those stories. Old Jules is someone who comes to western Nebraska. He creates a dugout for himself. And the first thing he does, this is out in western Nebraska where there is little rainfall.
Yeah.
And there's very, you don't think of this as a prime garden spot. He is able to create all sorts of things and grow them in the location where he is at, where the agriculturalists are telling him, you can't do it. You can't make these things grow. He makes them grow. He even starts, this is in western Nebraska, he even starts a vineyard out there and makes it grow and produces his own grapes and wine.
That's awesome.
It's an amazing story because why? They're taking care of the earth. They're helping the earth be what it should be.
And, you think, well, I'll let somebody else do it. But think how much more beautiful all of America could be, or all of the world, if we would take this idea that we need to care for this planet, and I'm going to say it again, I've said it a couple times, and get it out of the politics.
Yeah.
Let's do what's best for our planet.
Whatever happened to the Boy Scout code, which says,
Yeah.
I will do my best to be clean in my outdoor manners, be careful with fire, be considerate in the outdoors, and be conservation-minded. That's what it's about. It just means taking care. And there are some simple things that we can do. We don't have to try to change the whole world. There are simple things that we can do at home to be conservation-minded.
Absolutely. Now, some of those things, and I know we talked about this before, is when you go camping, you don't leave any trace that you're there, and that's not a bean can. That's nothing, and we could do that.
When I say trashing out, I mean it literally.
Yeah.
There's so many places that are trashed out, and I hate going camping at a place where somebody else has been there and they left beer cans everywhere, and they half burned something in the fire pit and it's still there, and they've left their trash scattered around. You don't need to do that. You can clean up. You can take bags with you. I mean, that's just bad manners.
All right, and there's also, and we see this on the television, and I don't remember what it's called. Maybe you do. This big, almost island of trash that's in the Pacific Ocean.
Yes.
And it moves around with the tides, and it just continues to swallow up more and more and more, and they don't know what to do with it.
That's right.
But it's filled with plastic things that will never, ever come into Earth and be part of it again.
Why it gets out to the water, I'm not completely sure, but people just don't care, and they trash things when they're out on the water sometimes. My son spent a year in the Marshall Islands, which is way, way, way out in the Pacific Ocean.
Yeah.
And he was way out on a small little island. I visited him out there. We went snorkeling together, and guess what we found way out there in the Pacific Ocean? We found old tires. We found plastic jugs. We found all sorts of junk that was on the floor of the bay that was around that island. It was just discouraging that trash just goes everywhere.
And it's not that people drop it there; it moves there with the tides.
It washes up there. Yes.
Yeah. Well, we've got to do a better job of creating beauty and order and what we can do to sustain life.
We still have a lot of beauty on this earth. We need to take care of it and try to clean up the parts that we have not done such a good job with.
All right, that'll wrap it up for our program this week. We will be back on Monday, this very time, very place. And as I always like to say, take the weekend and think of somebody you carry a resentment for and give them forgiveness. You know, forgiveness is very, very hard to figure out, but it's not hard to do when you just realize that Jesus died on the cross so we would be forgiven for our sin. So let's be more like Christ and forgive those who have done us wrong. It's what he said in the Lord's Prayer. It's the reason he died on the cross. All right, you take care. Have a great weekend, and thank you to Divine Truth Christian Store.
Divine Truth Christian Store, where you'll find more.